When I first took the job, I thought it would be easy money, guiding tourists through the Smoky Mountains, reciting bits of history, pointing out the best places to take photos, and maybe fending off the occasional black bear sighting. It all sounded manageable. I'd done more dangerous things for less money. Fresh out of college, saddled with student debt, and desperate to get away from city noise, the idea of spending days in nature seemed almost therapeutic. The job was posted through a small, local outfitter named Whisper Ridge Tours, with a neat little log cabin office tucked at the edge of Gatlinburg. The place smelled like pine wood and old coffee. The man who interviewed me was quiet, maybe in his 60s, with leathery skin and a look in his eye like he hadn't slept in decades. His name was Marvin. He skimmed through my resume, gave me a long, unreadable look, then said, "This ain't like them other tour jobs. Folks around here, well, we got rules. You follow 'em, you'll be fine. You break 'em." He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he slid a yellowed envelope across the desk. It was thick with folded paper inside. The front was labeled in bold block letters, "Guide Protocol, Do Not Lose." I opened it slowly. There were 6 rules listed, each one typed in a font that looked like it came from a typewriter. Beneath each rule was a small handwritten note, some barely legible, like previous guides had left their own warnings. I read them out loud. 1. Never take the red trail after 7:03 p.m. I saw her face in the trees. It wasn't human. 2. Always greet the woman in white if she appears near the creek. Do not ignore her, ever. 3. If you hear whistling from behind, do not turn around, no matter how close it sounds. 4. Campfire must be extinguished before midnight, not a minute later. He crawled out of the flames. 5. If someone in the group starts humming a song you've never heard, separate them immediately. 6. At the end of each tour, do a head count. If you have more than you started with, do not speak. Walk. Do not answer questions. Do not run. Let them follow you to the tree line, then walk away. Don't look back. I chuckled nervously when I finished. This is a joke, right? Like local flavor? Marvin's face didn't change. Memorize them. Don't lose the paper. I wanted to ask more questions, but his tone had ended the conversation. I was hired on the spot, given a uniform patch, and told to report the next morning. My first tour was a 2-day hike along the East Hollow Loop, a 20-mile trail with campsites, scenic overlooks, and, supposedly, incredible stargazing. My group was small, a retired couple from Missouri, a young solo backpacker named Eli, and a mom with her teenage daughter. The morning was pleasant, the air crisp, the scent of pine needles earthy and grounding. Everyone was excited, snapping pictures and chatting. I kept the tone light, telling old Appalachian ghost stories, nothing too serious, just enough to keep the group entertained. Everything felt normal until around mile 6. We were approaching a narrow trail that curved around a steep ridge. I glanced at the signpost and felt a chill run up my spine. Red Trail, Scenic Bypass. I looked at my watch, 7:01 p.m. The group was tired. The retired couple's knees were starting to give out, and the mom kept glancing at her phone for signal, clearly wanting to set up camp soon. The red trail would shave off 30 minutes of uphill walking. But the rule? Let's keep on the main path, I said quickly. Red trail gets washed out this time of year. Nobody argued. As we moved on, I kept looking back. The red trail remained still and silent. Too silent. The wind had completely stopped there. No bird calls, no rustling branches. It was like that part of the forest was holding its breath. We set up camp near a spot called Whispering Creek. The sun dipped below the hills, turning the sky a brilliant orange before fading into deep blue. I got the fire going and reminded myself of the rules. Campfire out before midnight. We ate, laughed, told stories. Eli played a few songs on his harmonica, which normally would have annoyed me, but he had a good rhythm. As the fire crackled, I glanced at my watch. 11:42 p.m. Time to shut it down. I reached for the water jug to douse the flames when I heard something strange. A splash near the creek, followed by the soft sound of humming. It wasn't coming from anyone in the group. I looked around. Everyone was here, seated, their mouths still. Except for one. The teenage daughter, her name was Maddie, was sitting cross-legged, gently rocking and humming. I didn't recognize the tune. It wasn't anything familiar. It sounded wrong, dissonant, almost as if multiple voices were layered over each other, clashing but still forming something hypnotic. I stood up slowly. Maddie, I said, keeping my voice calm, can I talk to you over here for a sec? She didn't look at me. Her humming got louder. The mother looked confused. She's just playing. No, now, I said, sterner than I meant to. Eli and the others were staring, clearly uncomfortable. I stepped forward, gently took Maddie by the arm, and guided her a few paces away. As soon as we broke the firelight, her humming stopped. Her eyes blinked rapidly like she'd just woken up. What? She asked, confused. Why are we? I shook my head. Just wanted to check in. You seem tired. She shrugged. I guess. I glanced at my watch again. 11:57. Let's go back. Fire's almost out. Back at camp, I poured water over the flames. They hissed and spat, the smoke curling into the night. The group settled into their tents. I stayed up, sitting on a log, like listening to the forest. The usual sounds returned, crickets, owls, wind, but it all felt thinner somehow, like a veil had been pulled taut around us, stretching but not breaking. At exactly 12:03 a.m., I heard it, a single knock. It came from the other side of the extinguished campfire. No one was there. Another knock, this one closer. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then the sound of something crawling over cold ash. A hiss, like dry leaves scraping over skin. And then, silence. I barely slept. At dawn, I did the head count. 5. Same as before. I exhaled in relief, shook everyone awake, and we moved on. The next leg of the trail led us deeper into the mountains, and I tried to keep spirits high, but the forest seemed darker now. The trees leaned in closer. Shadows lingered a second longer than they should have. By noon, we reached a narrow bridge crossing the creek. It was old, wooden, slick with moss. That's when I saw her, standing just beyond the far bank. A woman dressed in flowing white, her face hidden by long black hair. Her feet hovered an inch above the water. She didn't move, just waited. I remembered the rule. Greet her. I raised my hand and forced a smile. Afternoon, ma'am. The woman tilted her head, slowly, deliberately. Then she vanished. No splash, no rustle of leaves. Just gone. The others hadn't seen her. I told them it was nothing, a deer maybe. We kept walking, and I didn't dare look back. The trail narrowed the deeper we went. The trees here were older, their bark gnarled and cracked like scar tissue. Moss hung low from the branches, and even the birds had gone silent. We had 2 days left on the loop, but I was starting to feel like time didn't work the same way out here. Every hour stretched like it was stitched together with shadows and silence. After we passed the bridge, I noticed something else. Maddie, the teenage girl, had grown quiet. Not in the moody teen way, but in a distant, vacant way. She kept walking near the back of the group, always looking behind us. I asked if she was okay, and she just nodded, but her eyes never really met mine. Around mid-afternoon, I heard the first whistle. It came from behind us, a short, slow tune, like someone trying to get attention without words. My spine stiffened instantly. I hadn't mentioned the rules to anyone, not the real ones, but I remembered it clearly. If you hear whistling from behind, do not turn around. Eli heard it too. He paused, turned his head, and then looked at me. You hear that? I didn't respond, just kept walking. He frowned. It was a whistle, like someone's back there. I turned to him, but not toward the sound. Don't stop walking, seriously. He looked unnerved, but obeyed. The rest of the group trudged forward, and I could feel the tension rise. The sound came again, closer this time. Just 2 clear notes, like someone whistling a lullaby with missing pieces. Maddie stopped. No, I said sharply. Keep moving. She didn't respond. I stepped toward her slowly. Don't turn around. You hear me? Her eyes were glassy again, like the night before when she'd been humming. My heart pounded as I reached for her shoulder. Her head started to turn, not all the way, just a few inches. Maddie, I whispered, please. She blinked like something had snapped inside. Then she stumbled forward, almost in a daze. Her mother rushed to her, wrapping an arm around her protectively. I took a deep breath, kept my eyes on the trail, and didn't glance behind us again. Not even once. By dusk, we reached the second campsite, a flat clearing surrounded by boulders and heavy woods. There was a fire pit, a wooden post for hanging food bags, and a small trail that led down to a spring. I hated the way the shadows danced in this area. They didn't move naturally. They jerked and flickered even without wind. As the group unpacked, I quietly pulled out the rule sheet and read it again by the fading light. No new rules, No clues about what was happening to Maddie. She was still off. Her mother sat beside her, brushing her hair gently, but Maddie barely reacted, just stared into the trees. After dinner, Eli pulled me aside. "I've been on a lot of hikes," he said, "but something feels off out here. I know you heard that whistling." "I did," I admitted. "So what was it? An animal? Another group?" I shook my head. "There's nobody else out here, not for miles." He didn't believe me, but he didn't press. Still, I could see him glancing into the trees every few seconds, lips tight, hand gripping his pocket knife. I made sure the fire was out by 11:45 just to be safe. We all crawled into our tents, and I laid awake listening. Somewhere around midnight, I heard movement. Not footsteps, crawling. It was slow, steady, dragging across the forest floor like something pulling itself along without legs. I held my breath. The noise moved past my tent, closer to the others. Then silence. Then humming. It was that same unnatural tune Maddie had been humming the night before. I unzipped my tent just enough to peek out. The fire pit was dead, just as I'd left it, but something was standing at the edge of the trees. It was tall, thin, with limbs that bent too far the wrong way. Its face, if you could call it that, was covered in bark and writhing vines. It had no eyes, just a mouth, wide and toothless, that trembled with every note of the humming. It was facing Maddie's tent. I almost screamed, but the thing just stood there. Then slowly it tilted its head and vanished. Not into the woods, just gone, like a candle snuffed out. The next morning I called for an emergency trail exit, told the group there had been reports of a storm moving in fast and that we'd need to take the ridge path back to base. I radioed the outfitter, but the signal was weak. I barely got Marvin's voice on the other end before it cut off. But I heard one word before the static swallowed him. "Count." It echoed in my head like a warning. So before we left, I counted everyone. 5, still 5. We hiked quickly, taking the shorter ridge trail back. The mood was tense. Nobody talked much, not even Maddie. Her eyes stayed locked ahead, unblinking, like she was being led by something only she could see. Around noon, the fog rolled in. Thick, dense, and yellow-tinged like old paper. It wasn't natural. I knew that instantly. The Smokies get misty, sure, but this was different. It muffled sound. I couldn't hear birds, our footsteps, or even my own breathing. Everything became muted. We stopped briefly by a hollow tree for water. That's when I did another head count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I counted again. 6. An extra hiker. I scanned their faces, all familiar, except one. Standing near the back was a man I didn't recognize. His clothing looked a little too clean, his skin pale. His eyes were strange, too still, too quiet. None of the others seemed to notice him. They stood near him like he'd always been part of the group. I remembered the rule. If you have more than you started with, do not speak. Do not answer questions. Do not run. I swallowed hard and turned back to the trail. "All right," I said, forcing cheer into my voice. "Let's keep moving." And I walked. I didn't answer Eli when he asked if we were close. I didn't respond when the stranger suddenly walked beside me and said, "Nice day, isn't it?" His voice was empty, like it came from a throat that hadn't spoken in years. I didn't look at him, just kept walking. The fog began to thin as we neared the tree line. I could see the edge of the forest, the faint shimmer of the trailhead sign where we'd first entered. Step by step, the trees opened. Then, just before we reached the road, I felt the presence behind me vanish. No footsteps, no breath, just absence. I finally turned. He was gone. Everyone else looked confused, like they were waking from a long dream. Maddie blinked rapidly and looked around, then at her mom. "I feel weird," she whispered. Her mom hugged her. "We're almost back, baby." At the trailhead, Marvin was waiting. He looked at me, his expression grim. 6, he asked quietly. I nodded. He gave a long, slow sigh. "You did good." I wanted to ask what would have happened if I'd spoken, but I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. That night, back in my cabin, I read the rules again. And that's when I saw it. A new line had been added, not typed, scrawled in shaky handwriting below the 6th rule. If you forget one, it remembers. I didn't sleep the night I came back. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt it. The space in the dark where something else should have been. A presence behind me that didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't move, just waited, like it was holding its own breath, crouched in the dark corners of my mind. The next morning, I found muddy footprints on my porch. Barefoot. Too long. Too narrow. They trailed right up to my front door, and then stopped. I didn't open the door for an hour, just stood there, staring at the pattern, trying not to shake. When I finally stepped out, I looked around the edge of the cabin, half expecting to see something standing just out of view, waiting. But there was nothing. Still, I called Marvin. "You ever had a group come back with an extra?" I asked. There was a pause on the line, then a low grunt. "Twice. Once in '86, once last year. The extra usually drops off once you hit the road, but they don't always stay gone." "What does that mean?" "It means," he said slowly, "you should be careful where you walk for the next few nights and keep your mirrors covered." That night I followed his advice. I threw a sheet over my bathroom mirror, taped newspaper to the one in the hallway. I even flipped my phone screen down, just in case. I didn't want to see it again. But I knew it was near. I could feel it watching me. By morning, the newspapers were torn, not ripped like by hands, more like shredded, clawed. The mirror beneath had a smudge on it, like a handprint made of ash. Long fingers. Too many joints. I didn't wait around. I went back to the office and told Marvin I needed time off. He didn't argue, just nodded and handed me a slip of paper. It had an address on it. No name. "Old ranger named Harlan," he said. "He's the one who wrote the rules in the first place." That caught me off guard. "Wait, he made them?" "No, he found them." Said they were nailed to a tree on a trail that doesn't exist anymore. Most of the rangers back then either ignored them or went missing trying to prove them wrong. Harlan's the only one who's still breathing. I drove out that afternoon. The road was barely paved, and Harlan's cabin looked like it had been swallowed by the woods. A sagging roof, a porch full of animal skulls, and wind chimes made from bones. He answered the door in silence, just stared at me for a long moment, then opened it wider and gestured for me to come in. He didn't ask who I was, didn't ask why I'd come, just sat down and pointed at a dusty armchair. "You saw one," he said flatly. I nodded. "The extra?" "Yes." He gave a small grunt. "Didn't speak to it, I hope?" "No." "Good. That kind likes to make deals." He poured 2 glasses of something that smelled like firewood and pine needles. I didn't drink mine. Harlan leaned forward. "Thing about the Smokies," he said, "is that people don't realize how old they are. I don't mean geologically, I mean spiritually. There's stuff in those trees that's older than language, older than stories. The rules are the only things keeping them out." "So who made the rules?" His eyes darkened. "Not us." I waited, but he didn't elaborate. After a minute, I pulled out the rule sheet I kept in my pack and handed it to him. He looked it over, then frowned. "You're missing one." My blood turned cold. "What?" He reached into a drawer and pulled out his own version. Same parchment-like paper, same neat typewritten lines, except his had 7 rules. The 7th read, "If it follows you back, do not return to the trail until it finds someone else." "What does that mean?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "It means it's yours now," he said, "until it's not." I drove back to town in silence, the rule sheet crumpled in my passenger seat. I didn't go home. I checked into a roadside motel and stayed in a room with no mirrors, no reflective surfaces, nothing that might show me what I didn't want to see. Still, I woke up at 3:12 a.m. The time was always the same. The window had fogged up from the inside. Someone or something had drawn a shape in the glass, a circle, with a line through it. I wiped it away, heart pounding, and called Marvin the next morning. "Someone else has to go on the next tour," I said. "I can't." "You don't have a choice," he replied. "You were the only one on rotation. No one else wants that loop." I nearly screamed. "You know what's out there. You saw my face when I got back." "I did," he said quietly. "And I also know the rule. If it follows you, you can't go back until it finds someone else. What happens if I do?" Another pause. "You won't be coming back." That afternoon, I found Eli's number in the logbook and called him. "I need to talk to you about something," I said. "Yeah, I've been meaning to call you too," he replied. "What's wrong?" There was a long silence. "Something's been in my house," he whispered. "My dog won't go near the bedroom. I keep hearing whistling at night." My heart dropped. It didn't follow me. It followed him. I begged him to listen, to follow the rules, to cover mirrors, to never answer voices he didn't recognize. He thought I was insane, but I could hear the fear behind his words. He'd felt it too. I hung up and collapsed onto the motel bed, half relieved and half guilty. The thing had found someone else. That meant the seventh rule had been satisfied. I could go back, but that didn't mean I should. Marvin called 2 days later. Got a group asking for a private tour on the loop, VIP types. I told them you'd take it. I'm out, I said. Don't blame you, he replied. But you should know the rules changed again. I froze. What do you mean? They're not rules anymore. They're warnings. What's the difference? He sighed. Rules imply there's still a way out. I didn't sleep that night either, because when I finally dared to look in the mirror again, my reflection didn't move when I did. I didn't want to go back. Every instinct in my body told me not to. But 3 days after Marvin's call, I was staring at the packing list, double-checking my gear and lacing up my boots anyway. Something happens to you out there. It's not just fear. It's like your soul gets marked. The forest doesn't forget you, and part of you doesn't want it to. Like it plants a seed inside you, and no matter how far you run, it keeps growing, whispering. I told myself it was just one more tour, a short loop, 2 nights, 4 guests. That was the deal. But I was wrong. The 4 hikers were already waiting when I reached the trailhead. 2 older couples, friendly, chatty, all retired, all experienced campers. They introduced themselves, Doug and Karen, and Michael and Teresa. They were from Nashville. This was a bucket list hike for them. We started off mid-morning. The sun was shining, and the first few miles were uneventful. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, and for a few hours I let myself believe it might just be a normal trip. But the forest never stays normal for long. By late afternoon, the temperature dropped suddenly. Not the usual cool breeze, but a still icy chill that slithered beneath my jacket. That's when I noticed the trees. They weren't right. Too close together, trunks twisting like bones. The bark was darker, almost black. No undergrowth, no moss, just packed dead leaves. I checked the GPS. We weren't on the trail anymore. All right, folks, I said with a calm voice I didn't feel. We're going to adjust course. Seems the map glitched a bit. Doug gave me a thumbs up. No worries, we trust you. I wish they hadn't. We backtracked, but no matter which way we turned, we didn't find the trail. Even my compass spun erratically, twitching like it was panicked. By dusk, I knew we were in trouble. We made camp in a small clearing surrounded by crooked trees. I kept my flashlight tight in my grip all night, listening to the wind howl like distant voices. No fire this time. I wasn't going to risk it. Karen woke me around 3 a.m. There's someone walking around the tents, she whispered. Her face was pale, eyes wide. I held up a hand, listened. Crunching leaves, just beyond the tree line. But there were no footsteps, just the sound of movement. Something crawling low, dragging its limbs. It circled the camp twice, then stopped. I told everyone to stay inside. No one slept. By morning, Teresa was gone. No scream, no struggle, just gone. Her sleeping bag was torn open from the inside. Deep drag marks led away into the woods. I told the group it was a bear. They didn't believe me, but they were too scared to argue. We hiked all day, trying to find the ridge trail. The air was heavy, like it was pushing us down. The forest had gone completely silent. The trees leaned in. I checked the GPS again, still blank. Doug spotted something up ahead, an old wooden post with faded lettering. It said, Trail 0. I stopped in my tracks. That wasn't on any map. Michael walked ahead, frowning. This leads north, right? I didn't answer. My skin was crawling. Something about the sign looked too old, too perfect, like it hadn't aged at all. Still, we had no choice. We followed it for hours, no breaks in the trees, no sounds, just the path, straight and narrow, sloping deeper into a ravine that I didn't remember existing. Eventually, we came across a cabin. It sat just off the trail, half buried in moss. Its roof sagged, door broken off the hinges. A single window stared out like a watching eye. Doug wanted to investigate. If someone lived here, maybe they left a radio or a flare. I told him no, begged him not to go in. But he did. He stepped inside, flashlight beaming around. Michael followed a few seconds later. They were gone less than a minute, and then they screamed. It wasn't a human scream, not fully. It was shredded, like their throats were being torn as they shouted. Karen and I stood frozen outside. I yelled for them, no answer. Then the screaming stopped. Karen and I backed away slowly, eyes on the cabin. The doorway was pitch black. Nothing came out. We didn't speak. We just turned and walked. Fast, The trail behind us changed. We were on gravel now, but I hadn't seen a gravel section on the loop in years. The trees grew tighter, shadows stretched across the path, even though the sky was still bright. Eventually, we reached a fork in the trail. No signs, no markers, just two paths, left and right. I pulled out my map. It had changed. The trails were all wrong. The loop was gone. In its place, new routes had formed. One path was labeled return and the other stay. Karen whispered, "Is this a joke?" I didn't answer. She took the return path. Without thinking, I followed, but the forest didn't let us go easily. As we walked, the trees groaned, the wind rose into a shriek, and from behind us I heard it again. Whistling, slow, hollow, almost playful. Karen started crying. "Don't turn around," I whispered. "No matter what, don't look." The sound followed us for miles. It never got closer, but it never stopped. When we finally emerged from the trees, I felt the sunlight hit my face like a flood. The road was there, the van, civilization, safety. But Karen was no longer beside me. I turned. The trail was empty. Just trees. No Karen. No sound. I waited. She didn't come out. When I got back to the office, Marvin was gone. The rule sheet had changed again. Someone had added a new line at the bottom, scrawled in dark ink. Trail 0 only appears when it wants someone. Underneath it, a second line had appeared. You should have let it take you. That night, I heard the whistling again, from inside my house. The whistling stopped at 3:33 a.m. I hadn't moved from my bedroom floor. I sat in the corner, back to the wall, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other. My phone had died 2 hours earlier, even though it was plugged in, and the lights had flickered out shortly after. No footsteps, no voices, just the sound of that tune winding through the rooms of my house like it belonged here. Then silence. When the sun came up, I checked every door, every window. Nothing broken, no signs of entry. But in the living room, something had been left behind. A pine cone, oldie, wrapped in thread, and beneath it, scratched into my hardwood floor, "Come back!" I didn't want to. I couldn't, but I had to know. So I went back to the ranger station, only to find it deserted. Marvin's truck was still in the lot, keys in the ignition. His mug was half full on the desk, still warm. But he wasn't there. No blood, no mess. Just missing, like the forest had finally claimed him too. I went through the old logbooks, the filing cabinets, anything that might tell me what was happening. Most of it was useless, weather patterns, maintenance records. But one folder, buried deep in the archives, had no label. Inside were hand-drawn maps, photos from the 1950s, and notes scribbled in frantic handwriting. Most of the photos showed people smiling at trailheads or around campfires. But in the background of several, barely noticeable, there was a shape. Tall, gaunt, sometimes crouched, sometimes standing between trees, always watching. In the margins of one photo, someone had written, "It follows the rule breakers first." Another note said, "Trail 0 exists in layers like it can only be entered when it chooses, but it never forgets those who've seen it." I flipped to the last page. A name was scrawled there. E. Thornton, the original author of the rules, and an address. It was an hour outside of town, deep into the forest edge. The road wasn't even on Google Maps, but I didn't hesitate. By the time I reached the old cabin, it was nearly sunset. The place was half swallowed by vines and brambles, with boards nailed across the windows. I knocked twice, waited, and knocked again. Nothing. I turned to leave, and the door opened behind me. An old man stood there, hunched, face lined like bark. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just stepped aside and let me in. Inside, the cabin was filled with paper, maps, journals, drawings, strings connecting photos on the walls. At the center of it all was a massive wooden table and a large piece of parchment pinned beneath a glass sheet. The original rules, 7 of them, the same ones Harlan had shown me. But these weren't typed, they were carved, hand-cut with a blade, old, ancient. I looked at him. "You wrote these?" He shook his head. "I copied them." "From where?" He motioned to a far wall where a massive photo had been nailed. It showed an oak tree, larger than any I'd ever seen. Its trunk was hollow, and inside, barely visible, was a spiral staircase. "I found that tree in 1967, he rasped. "Only once. The staircase went down. I followed it." He paused. "I shouldn't have." I swallowed hard. "What's down there?" "Things that were never meant to be seen by daylight. The rules were carved into the wall inside that tree, not by human hands." He pointed to a line scrawled beneath the rules. The forest is not alive, it is awakened. I told him about the pine cone, about Karen, about the whistling. His hands trembled. It marked you, he said. You can't run from it anymore. So what do I do? He walked to a shelf, pulled down a box wrapped in rope and handed it to me. Go back to where it started. Trail 0. When it appears again, follow it. No matter what happens, don't turn around. Don't speak. Don't react. Let it show you what it wants to show you. I opened the box. Inside was a lantern. Old, rusted, but glowing faintly blue. This will light your way, he said, but only for one night. And if I fail? He didn't answer. I left the cabin just after dark. As I stepped back into the woods, the wind picked up behind me, and the trees groaned. They remembered me. I hiked through the dark until I reached the fork. It was there. 2 trails. One marked return. The other trail 0. I took it. The moment my boot touched the dirt, the world changed. The air went still. The forest went silent. And the sky turned the color of bruised flesh. I lit the lantern. Its blue glow pushed the dark back just enough to see the path. But what lay ahead wasn't a trail. It was a graveyard. Dozens of tents. Torn, ripped open, bones scattered in patterns. Some of the bones were human, others weren't. I walked slowly, careful not to disturb anything. The trees leaned in, whispering words I couldn't understand. My ears bled, and then I saw her, Karen, standing in the middle of the path, her back to me, still wearing the same jacket from that day. Karen, I whispered. She didn't move. I stepped forward. Karen? She turned, but it wasn't her. Not anymore. Her face was gone, replaced by a smooth wall of flesh. Her mouth stretched across the wrong side of her head. Her hands were claws. She screeched, and everything went dark. The lantern flickered out, and I ran. I didn't care about the rules. I didn't care about anything. I just ran. Branches tore at my skin. The ground shifted beneath me. Voices screamed from the trees. You should have stayed. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing beside an old, moss-covered tree. And then silence. I opened my eyes. Morning. Sunlight filtered through the branches. I was lying at the edge of the ranger station trailhead, back where I started. The lantern was gone. So was the box. But carved into the dirt beside me were 6 words. It's not over. Not for you. It's been 1 week since I came out of Trail 0. My skin still itches like it doesn't belong to me. My eyes don't adjust to light the same way. And at night I hear footsteps walking the halls of my house. Even though I lock every door, every window, every time the sun sets. They never try to open the doors. They don't need to. I haven't told anyone what happened. Who would believe me? The ranger station is boarded up now. The tourism board shut it down after too many disappearances. Officially, they blame landslides, rough terrain, bad weather. Unofficially, no one asks questions. But someone should. Because the forest isn't done with me. I feel it waking up again. Last night I found something new on my porch. A bundle of feathers wrapped in deer hide, tied with red string. The same string that Karen had braided into her hair on the first day of the tour. That's when I realized Trail 0 didn't want to kill me. It wanted to use me. I was supposed to bring people in, keep the cycle going, feed it. I started hearing voices at work, in the grocery store, over the radio. They whisper the names of the hikers I lost. They tell me it's my fault, that the forest never lets go of what it takes. It just hides it better than we can. And that night, I found Karen standing at the edge of the woods behind my house. She wasn't human anymore. She wasn't even pretending. Her face was a blur, like a painting smudged by too many hands. Her bones bent bends bones shouldn't bend. Her arms were too long, her jaw too wide. But her voice, it was hers. Help me, she rasped. They won't let me go. And then she vanished into the trees. I barely slept. This morning I went back to the cabin where I found E. Thornton, but it was burned to the ground. Ash and blackened wood. In the center of the wreckage, untouched, was a photograph. It showed me, standing in front of the ranger station. Behind me, barely visible in the trees, was a figure. Tall, grinning. I took the photo and left. I drove for hours out of Tennessee into Kentucky, heading north with no destination in mind. But no matter how far I went, the forest followed. I stopped for gas. The pump screen glitched. Return. I checked into a motel. The TV turned itself on at 3 a.m. and played a video of the trail. My trail. Empty. Waiting. When I looked out the window, the trees were closer than they should have been. And then tonight, it finally gave me a choice. I came home to find the rule sheet nailed to my door. Same yellow paper, same 7 rules. But this time there was an eighth. 8. If you survive the forest, you must replace the guide who didn't. And beneath it, scrawled in fresh red ink, we never chose you by accident. The truth hit me all at once. Marvin didn't retire. He was taken. Just like Harlan. Just like Thornton. Just like me. That's why the rules don't change for tourists, but they do for guides. Because we're not supposed to survive. We're just placeholders. Meant to follow the rules, to enforce them, to lead others to their fate until we break down or disobey or disappear. And then the forest finds a new one. I'm not leaving this time. I've packed a bag. The same pack I used the first day I ever led a hike into the Smokies. I've got food, water, rope. Not that any of it will matter. Because I'm not going into Trail Zero to survive. I'm going to burn it. I've mapped every entry point, marked every anomaly. I've studied the layers of the forest. There's something beneath it, something alive, something dreaming. If I can find the heart of it, maybe I can stop it. Maybe I can break the cycle. Or maybe I'll just disappear like the others. Either way, someone has to try. Because the forest is still feeding. And there's always another hiker, another tour group, another smiling face standing at the trailhead, ready for adventure, completely unaware of the rules that must never be broken. If you ever find yourself in the Smoky Mountains and your guide seems a little too quiet, if their eyes twitch when you ask about old trails, if you hear whistling at night or see someone in the woods that shouldn't be there, leave. Don't ask questions. Don't look back. Because once you see Trail Zero, it sees you too.